It's 3rd and 1 in overtime. If the Colts score, they win. Then, 45 million fans watching on their TVs get the following message. Please stand by. Picture transmission has been temporarily interrupted. At this moment, a drunk fan would streak onto the field. It would turn out, though, he was not drunk, and he was not some random fan. Rather, it was an NBC employee who was instructed to temporarily stop the game so the network could get their connection back. It was a bizarre stunt, but it ensured millions saw the game-winning touchdown in overtime. But what made this game so important that NBC felt the need to do this? The 1958 NFL Championship game is often referred to as the greatest game in NFL history. But how can a sloppy game with 8 fumbles, missed field goals, and an interception be considered the greatest game in NFL history? It's not the game itself necessarily, but rather the moment it signified. At one point, believe it or not, the NFL had lower ratings than horse racing. But a perfect storm was brewing, and by the late 50s, football was slowly ascending to the #1 sport, and this game we're talking about today had a role to play in that. As I mentioned, the game was kind of sloppy, but there were still some huge moments in this game that make it an all-time classic, and I want to highlight those for you today. Before I get into the game itself, I wanted to cover some of the reasons this game is so historic. To name a few, it was the first nationally televised title game, which timed perfectly with the explosion of TVs in the household, from which an estimated 45 million fans would tune in on this day. It was also the first official game to go to overtime. Overtime was experimented with in a 1955 preseason game, but this was its first official use. The game featured 12 future Hall of Fame players, as well as probably the greatest assistant coach tandem ever, the Giants' offensive coordinator Vince Lombardi and defensive coordinator Tom Landry. As for the two teams, the Colts were stacked, with the #1 offense leading the league in scoring with 381 points, as well as the second best defense in points allowed. The Giants were also excellent. They had the best defense in the league, anchored by legend Sam Huff, allowing only 183 points that season. And the offense was led by running back Frank Gifford, who had just scored 10 touchdowns in 10 games. The first quarter did not have much action, the only points coming from a Giants field goal. But by the second quarter, the Colts got into a bit of a rhythm and scored 2 touchdowns. So at halftime, the Colts went in with a 14-3 lead. The Colts O-line was excellent, giving Unitas plenty of time to carve up the Giants secondary. But here's big play number 1. We're in the third quarter now, and the Colts are down at the Giants' 1-yard line. They tried to run the ball 3 times, but had no luck. It's 4th down. Weeb Bank trusts Unitas, so they go for it. Unitas called a play for running back Alan Ameche to throw a pass to the tight end, but Ameche thought it was a run play, so the Giants had an easy time tackling Ameche for a loss. The Colts didn't know it then, but momentum had shifted. The Giants drove 95 yards for a touchdown, followed by an 81-yard touchdown drive. They had taken a 17-14 lead 1 minute into the 4th, which brings up big play number 2. The Giants have the ball late in the 4th with a chance to run out the clock. 3rd and 4, Frank Gifford runs for what he thought was a first down, but Gino Marchetti breaks his ankle on the play, and this changes the course of history. You may be thinking, that seems like a pretty far-fetched claim. A broken ankle changing history? Well, that depends if you believe Frank Gifford. According to him, he made the first down, but in the commotion of dealing with the injury, the refs placed the ball in the wrong spot, just short of the first down. If the Giants got the first, they could have won the game, and there would be no overtime, and so this probably wouldn't be the greatest game ever. The Giants opted to punt, putting their faith in that #1 defense. The Colts field the punt at their own 13, with just under 2 minutes left. Big moment number 4. This drive had been in the works for 2 years. During a late-night film session, Johnny Unitas and Raymond Berry came across a formation where a linebacker split out to chuck a receiver off the line of scrimmage, then release the coverage to the safety. After seeing this, they agreed for Berry to run a slant away from the linebacker if they ever encountered such coverage. So here we are. Unitas leans into the huddle. We've got 86 yards and 2 minutes. Let's get to work. But that evening was 2 years ago. Did the players actually remember that conversation? I can't even remember what I ate 2 days ago. On this play, Berry was set to run a 10-yard in route, but he recognized the same coverage, so he self-audibled to a slant. Unitas was on the same page, and they connected for a 25-yard reception, in what Berry said was the most important play of his career. That led to a couple more Unitas to Berry completions, and the Colts were down to the Giants' 13. Unitas, to no surprise of you that know him, just executed a flawless 2-minute drive to set up a potential game-tying field goal with 7 seconds remaining. I say potential because the Colts kicker had just made 4 of 10 field goals that season. I told myself I better not miss it, or it would be a long, cold winter back on the farm in North Dakota. Thankfully for Steve Myra, he made it, and we were about to enter overtime. But Unitas, and many other players, didn't even know the rules, which was the first to score wins. That would not stop him though. In overtime, the Giants received first, but had a quick 3 and out. Then Unitas responded with a 13-play, 80-yard drive, looking to finish off the game. But before he could try, big moment number 5. At New York's 8-yard line, the TV network reception went. Turns out a cable had been disconnected. Enter the, quote, drunk fan. 45 million fans had just been cut off from history being made. And the stunt actually worked, they only missed a couple inconsequential plays. While the teams were waiting for the commotion to be dealt with, Unitas ran to the sideline to discuss with Eubank. Keep it on the ground, Eubank said. We don't want an interception here. We can go for the field goal if running plays don't work. Unitas initially obliged, a 1-yard run by Amechi. Then, the man who was cut by the Steelers just 3 years prior went rogue. In a good way. All they needed was a field goal to win, but Unitas drew up something nobody was expecting, not even his coach, opting to throw and connecting with his tight end, which set up 3rd and goal at the 1. Yeah, I'd say that throw is big moment number 6. Unitas would then go back to the run, with Alan Amechi finishing off the game with a 1-yard touchdown, as fans stormed the field. When Unitas was asked after the game why he passed, because it could have been intercepted, he responded, "When you know what you're doing, they're not intercepted." 2 clutch drives, one to tie the game to send it to overtime, and then another to win the game. That's Johnny Unitas right there. And as I speak, I realize I need to make a video on this legend as soon as possible. Let me get to that now, actually.